The lights of the music world shined brightly on David, a 20-year-old indie R&B sensation. He had everything a young artist could dream of: fame, fans, and fortune. From humble beginnings, David had risen to the top with a sound that touched the hearts of millions. His songs were filled with raw emotion, catchy beats, and a voice that could melt even the hardest of hearts. People across the globe knew his name, and his music was on every playlist. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. One night, a shocking video surfaced on the internet. The footage was brief, unsettling, and left everyone who watched it speechless. David, sitting in a dimly lit room, looked directly into the camera, unaware that he was being filmed. His words, meant to be private, spilled out like a secret he never meant to share. "I did it," he said, his voice steady but cold. "She was just too much to handle. I had to make her go quiet forever." The screen went black. The world froze. For fans who had followed David's rise, this confession felt like a punch to the gut. How could the man they admired so much be capable of such an awful thing? The rumors began to spread like wildfire, and the world started asking one question: who was the victim? The answer came soon after. Celeste Rivas, a 15-year-old girl, was found dead in David's Tesla. The body had been left abandoned for months, decomposing in the back of the car, parked in a quiet corner of Hollywood Hills. She had once been just another fan, like so many others who followed David on social media. Celeste had admired him from a distance, posting videos of herself singing his songs on TikTok, her face glowing with excitement whenever she mentioned his name. She never imagined the dark secret that was unfolding behind the scenes. No one did. Days after the body was found, another chilling discovery was made. A song, one that hadn't been released yet, began circulating online. It was called Celeste. The melody was haunting, carrying the signature lo-fi style that had made David famous. But what made this song so different from any of his other tracks were the lyrics. As the haunting music played, the words that David sang were not about love or heartbreak, but about something much darker. "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest," the song began. "Smell her on my clothes like cigarettes. I hear her voice each time I take a breath. I'm obsessed." The lyrics were eerie, and they seemed to reveal something no one could have known at the time. Celeste had a tattoo on her chest, a small mark that read, "Shh," just like the song described. And the smell of cigarettes, the same foul odor that employees at the tow yard had reported when they found the car, was now hauntingly mentioned in the song, months before anyone knew about it. The timing was impossible to ignore. The song, recorded months before Celeste's death, was a confession wrapped in a melody. The song was David's admission, hidden in plain sight. It was clear now. He had revealed his darkest secret long before anyone knew what had really happened. But the world didn't know this yet. No one knew the connection, and David didn't even realize he had given the truth away. The eerie melody continued to spread, from TikTok to Twitter, from SoundCloud to YouTube. It didn't take long for the internet to explode. People listened to the song, playing it over and over, trying to decode the lyrics, trying to piece together the meaning behind the haunting words. Some believed it was just another song, a dark piece of art meant to reflect David's emotional struggles. But others, the ones who knew what had happened to Celeste, couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a song. This was something more, something dangerous. As the song continued to gain traction, more pieces of evidence started to surface. Leaked Discord messages from David's fan server, titled "David's Petals," showed disturbing conversations. In one of the messages, David allegedly spoke about Celeste's flipping out and how he had to calm her permanently. The message was chilling, describing how he wrapped her body in plastic and left it in the frunk of his Tesla, the same way her body would later be found. The connection between the song and the crime was undeniable, and yet David had no idea that his confession had already been broadcast to the world. As the leaked messages and song continued to circulate, more pieces of the puzzle came together. David's words from the song, "She's gone quiet forever now," like the song, took on a horrifying new meaning. The internet was convinced. David had known all along what he had done, but there was more to the story, much more. In the months leading up to the discovery of Celeste's body, David's career had been at its peak. He had become a household name, selling out concerts and earning accolades for his breakthrough album. But what no one knew was the dark side of his fame, the secret relationship he had with Celeste, which began long before anyone had realized it. Celeste had been just another fan at first, posting her covers on TikTok and getting lost in the thrill of interacting with her idol. David had noticed her early on, leaving comments on her posts, sending her messages. The messages became more personal, more intimate, until the line between fan and artist blurred. By the time Celeste was 13, David allegedly offered to fly her to Los Angeles to meet in person. Their relationship, hidden behind the veil of social media, quickly escalated. The internet dug deeper and fans began uncovering old messages between David and Celeste. They were disturbing. David had known Celeste was just a child, yet he had continued to flirt with her, whispering sweet promises of fame and opportunity. "Age is just a number in art," he wrote to her, urging her to keep their connection a secret. They both had matching tattoos, symbols of their hidden bond. And as time passed, the lines between artist and fan faded. By 2024, Celeste had become more than just a fan. She had become his muse, his obsession. But as the relationship deepened, so did the darkness. Celeste's mother had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. She had heard about David, of course, but she never imagined her daughter was involved with him. When Celeste disappeared in early 2024, her mother had no idea who David was or what he had done. The timeline of Celeste's disappearance was equally eerie. She was last seen on April 5, 2024, heading to a movie with her brother, but she never arrived. Her phone went offline shortly after, and her excitement about meeting David was evident in her final Snapchat message. The next time anyone saw her, it was in the back of David's abandoned Tesla. When investigators found the car in Hollywood Hills months later, they found the body wrapped tightly in plastic, just as David had allegedly described in his messages. The car's foul odor matched the description given by witnesses, and Celeste's clothing matched the description given by her mother. Everything fit together in a way that left no room for doubt. Celeste's death had been planned, executed, and hidden in plain sight. The case quickly became a sensation. People couldn't stop talking about it. The leaked songs, the mysterious messages, the eerie connection between David's lyrics and the murder, it was all too much to ignore. The more they learned, the more they realized that David's confession had been hiding in plain sight all along. David's world crumbled. His career, which had once soared to unimaginable heights, was now in ruins. His fans, who had once adored him, now felt betrayed. The people who had supported him, who had seen him as a role model, were left asking one simple question: how could someone capable of making such beautiful music also be capable of murder? David had unknowingly confessed long before anyone could piece it all together. And now the world was left to grapple with the truth, a truth that had been hidden in the lyrics of a song, a confession made in the dark, and a haunting melody that could never be undone. The question remained: was David guilty of murder, or had he been set up? The internet had already convicted him. Now it was up to the law to decide. The story was far from over. David's journey to stardom began in the quietest of places, a small bedroom in his family's home. At first, he wasn't a household name or an R&B sensation. He was just a regular teenager, surrounded by the hum of his computer, making music late into the night. He didn't have the fancy studios or the big-name producers. All he had was a dream, a love for music, and a laptop with basic recording software. But it didn't take long for people to take notice. From his very first upload, something special stood out in David's music. His songs weren't like the others. His voice was raw, full of emotion, and carried a sound that felt both fresh and familiar. He had a way of pouring his heart into every note, turning his pain and passion into something everyone could relate to. People found him on SoundCloud, then on TikTok, and soon David's voice was everywhere. In 2022, everything changed. His breakout track, Romantic Homicide, exploded on TikTok, and within weeks it became a viral sensation. Fans flooded to his social media accounts, sharing his music and praising his lyrics. It wasn't long before David hit the charts. rising to the top of the Billboard rankings with the kind of success many could only dream of. Young fans around the world knew his songs by heart, and his shows were sold out in minutes. David's rise to fame seemed unstoppable, but as the lights of fame shone brighter, there were shadows lurking beneath the surface, secrets that David had carefully hidden from the world. Beneath the polished social media posts and the sold-out concerts, there were whispers of darker things, things that no one knew about, things that would eventually come to light and change everything. Celeste Rivas was just like any other teenager, young, hopeful, and full of dreams. She spent hours each day scrolling through TikTok, sharing her favorite songs, dancing and posting covers of popular tracks. It was one of these very posts that caught David's eye. Celeste had posted a cover of his hit song, Romantic Homicide, and something about her voice stood out to him. It wasn't just that she had a good voice. There was a certain energy in her performance that David couldn't ignore. She was talented, and more than that, she had a unique charm that seemed to draw people in. At the time, Celeste was just 15 years old, living in Lake Elsinore, California. She wasn't a big-time influencer yet, but she had dreams of one day becoming famous. She admired David for everything he had achieved and, like many fans, hoped to one day meet him. Little did she know that hope would soon become something darker, something that would take her life in a direction no one could have predicted. When David reached out to her, it was everything Celeste had hoped for. A message from her idol, telling her how much he appreciated her cover of his song, made her heart race. They started talking more, at first about music, then about life. It felt like a dream come true. David, the star, seemed genuinely interested in her, and for Celeste, it was everything she had ever wanted. Their connection grew stronger over time. The messages between them became more frequent, more personal. David shared music ideas with Celeste, sending her demos and talking about his music in ways he hadn't with anyone else. Celeste, in turn, began opening up about her own life, her hopes, and her struggles. It seemed like an innocent exchange, two people sharing a love for music and art, but things slowly began to change. What started as harmless communication quickly crossed a line. David, who had always kept a professional distance from his fans, began blurring the lines between fan and friend. At first, it seemed like an innocent crush. David admired her voice, Celeste admired his talent. But the relationship began to feel more personal than professional. It was subtle at first. A comment here, a flirty message there. But as the months passed, their conversations began to take a darker turn. By 2023, when Celeste was just 14 and David was 19, their messages became more intimate. David's words, once innocent and encouraging, now hinted at something more. He began asking personal questions, and the conversations became more about their emotions and less about music. He would often refer to her as his muse, a term that made her feel special at first, but later made her uncomfortable. In March of 2024, Celeste posted another video of herself singing, and David responded with more than just compliments. He told her how much he liked her, how much he admired her, and how they should keep their connection secret. "It's just between us," he said, and Celeste, eager to maintain their bond, agreed. At the same time, Celeste's family was growing concerned. Her parents had noticed that she was spending more time on her phone, communicating with someone she refused to tell them about. When they asked who it was, Celeste hesitated before mentioning David. She claimed he was just a friend, but her parents didn't trust the situation. They didn't like how much Celeste had become fixated on someone so much older than her. But despite their warnings, Celeste kept talking to David, her excitement growing every time she got a message from him. Meanwhile, David continued to encourage her, making promises of fame and opportunities. He offered to fly her out to Los Angeles to meet him, to collaborate on music. To Celeste, it felt like the chance of a lifetime. He was giving her a chance to escape her small town and make it big. She couldn't resist the pull, but as their relationship grew, so did the danger. The things David began to say, his compliments, his promises, his suggestions, became more controlling. He asked Celeste to keep their conversations a secret, telling her that it was just art, that the age difference didn't matter. But to Celeste, it began to feel like more than art. It started to feel like manipulation. David was no longer the distant, mysterious artist she had admired from afar. He had become something else, something darker, something that held power over her. The excitement that had once filled her heart began to fade, replaced by a sense of unease. But she couldn't turn away. She was too deep now, too involved in a relationship that had started with admiration, but quickly morphed into something she couldn't escape. By mid-2024, whispers began to spread. Fans who had followed David and Celeste's interactions online started to notice things. The messages, though subtle at first, began to seem far too personal. Fans speculated about the nature of their relationship, some saying it was nothing more than a connection between an artist and a fan, while others saw something darker beneath the surface. "Something doesn't feel right," one fan commented. "It's too secretive, too personal." As David's popularity grew, so did the scrutiny. Fans started digging into the messages, analyzing every word, every interaction between David and Celeste. They found inconsistencies, odd phrases, and moments that didn't sit right. One message in particular stood out. David had written to Celeste, "Age is just a number in art." Some fans felt uneasy about it, but others brushed it off as part of the artist's persona. But the tension was building. Fans began to speculate that something more was going on. Why was David so protective of their conversations? Why was Celeste becoming more distant, more secretive? Could something sinister be unfolding behind the scenes? The questions began to mount, but no one had the answers. Celeste, meanwhile, was starting to feel trapped. She loved David's music, and she admired him, but now she was beginning to feel like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. The messages became harder to ignore, and the promises began to feel less like opportunities and more like threats. She had become a part of something far bigger than she ever realized, a part of a story that was about to turn dark, something no one was prepared for. As fans continued to speculate online, Celeste kept her secret, unable to turn away from the very thing that had drawn her in. She couldn't see the danger that was right in front of her, and David, caught up in his fame and his own twisted desires, couldn't see the damage he was doing. The whispers grew louder, and the tension kept building, leading to a tragic conclusion no one could have ever imagined. The story was far from over, but it was already too late to stop what was coming. The music world was still buzzing from David's meteoric rise. His fans adored him, and his songs were on repeat in millions of homes. But one day everything came crashing down. It was a quiet afternoon when the first whispers of the leak began. Fans stumbled upon a new song on social media, one that had never been released. The title was simple, Celeste. But what made it unsettling was not the song title, but the eerie way the music seemed to echo something dark, something no one had known until then. The demo track quickly spread, and before long it had taken over social media platforms. The sound was unmistakably David's, his smooth, haunting voice weaving through the familiar lo-fi beats that had made him a star. But this wasn't just any song. It was more than a new track. It was a confession. As the demo played, people started to realize that David was speaking about Celeste, the same Celeste whose body had been discovered weeks earlier. Her name wasn't mentioned outright, but every word of the song felt like it was meant for her. For the first time, a chilling connection between David and the crime began to emerge. The song's eerie melody filled the rooms of fans. But it wasn't the music that disturbed them. It was the lyrics. It was as if David was singing about something only he knew, the murder of Celeste. The track was more than a song. It was a disturbing piece of evidence. How could David have known these details? How could he have sung about it months before anyone knew the truth? As the demo played, the lyrics sent a wave of shock through everyone who listened. The haunting words filled the silence, creating an eerie atmosphere. "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest." The line sent chills down the spine of anyone who heard it. How could David have known that Celeste had a tattoo on her chest? A tattoo that had not been publicly known. Celeste's family had only shared details of the tattoo after the discovery of her body. But here, in this song, David described it with an eerie precision. The song continued, and the next line only made things worse. "Smell her on my clothes like cigarettes." This wasn't just a poetic expression or a metaphor. This was a detail no one could have guessed at unless they had been there. When the authorities found Celeste's body in the back of David's abandoned Tesla, witnesses from the tow yard had reported a foul smell coming from the car, a rotting stench that was impossible to ignore. The smell of decay filled the air around the car, and here was David, singing about it months before the body was even found. At first, it seemed like a coincidence, a line in a song that could have meant anything. But as the lyrics continued, the sense of unease grew. I hear her voice each time I take a breath. I'm obsessed. Was this just an artist pouring out his emotions? Or was this an artist confessing? The song had a haunting, almost eerie quality to it. As the music played, listeners couldn't help but feel like they were hearing something they shouldn't, something deeply personal. David's voice, once smooth and comforting, now seemed to carry a weight of guilt and regret. He wasn't just singing about heartbreak or unrequited love. He was singing about a death. The song moved to the bridge, and this was the moment when things took a darker turn. David's voice, already filled with emotion, suddenly became more urgent. The music slowed down, the melody softening. Then came the lyrics. Missing you so much makes me depressed. For a moment, it seemed like a regular lyric, a line about lost love, a line about grief. But then, the song shifted. The music cut abruptly to silence. The instrumental dropped out. It was a pause that felt heavy with meaning, as though David had realized what he had just said, as though he had suddenly understood the weight of the confession he had just made. But the silence wasn't just a musical break. It was as if the pause in the song gave the listeners a moment to absorb the gravity of what they had just heard. The song felt like it had been written with too many personal details, too many things only someone who had been intimately involved could know. The line about Celeste, the tattoo, the cigarettes, all these details connected with the facts that had only just been uncovered by the police. And then, after the bridge, the song continued, echoing a deep sadness that resonated with anyone who heard it. The silence in the middle of the song, though brief, felt like a confession. David had said too much. The pause felt like he had realized the depth of his mistake, but it was too late. The world had already begun to piece it together. It was not just the lyrics or the sudden silence that disturbed everyone. It was the timing. The demo track Celeste was recorded in December 2023, months before Celeste's body was discovered. The police had only just identified her remains in September 2025 after months of investigation. How could David have known these details? How could he have sung about Celeste, her tattoo, and the smell on his clothes, months before the world knew what had really happened? David had recorded the track when Celeste was still alive. She had gone missing in April 2024, but the song had been finished months before her disappearance. The music, the lyrics, and the eerie details were now impossible to ignore. The song was a confession months before anyone had connected the dots. It had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. The eerie lyrics, the strange silence in the bridge, and the unsettling details about the tattoo, the smell, and Celeste's death. All of it had been captured in the music before the world even knew the truth. The most twisted part? No one had realized it until now. David had unknowingly left behind the most damning evidence in the form of a song. The very track that had gained him millions of fans now carried with it a dark truth, one that would change everything for him and for Celeste. The timing couldn't have been more haunting. A confession recorded before the crime had even been discovered, months ahead of time, hidden in a song that David never thought would be heard. As the realization began to spread, people couldn't stop talking about it. The song was everywhere, on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube. People dissected the lyrics, trying to understand what they meant. They debated whether David was guilty, whether the song was just a piece of art, or whether it was a confession wrapped in a haunting melody. What was once thought to be a hit song, a ballad for the brokenhearted, now had a much darker, sinister meaning. David had inadvertently confessed to a crime he never thought would be exposed. The song, once a part of his musical genius, was now the thing that would haunt him forever. The music was no longer just a song, it was a confession. The confession song wasn't the only thing that left a trail behind. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered even more unsettling evidence. This time, in the form of Discord messages. These messages were leaked from a private server called David's Pedals, a space where fans and followers gathered to discuss his music. What seemed like innocent conversations between fans and David's team took on a much darker tone as the messages began to reveal the truth. In the months following Celeste's disappearance, a series of messages were exchanged that made everyone's blood run cold. It was in these messages that David allegedly discussed the most gruesome details of the cover-up. At first, the messages seemed casual, small talk and music discussions, but soon they became a chilling blueprint for the disposal of Celeste's body. One message from April 2024, just days after Celeste's disappearance, read, "Had to handle things with Celeste. Wrapped her tight in the frunk, plastic from Amazon. Parked the Tesla in Hollywood Hills. Let it sit till the tow truck comes. No tickets on it yet." For anyone not familiar with the term frunk, it was the front trunk of David's Tesla, the very place where Celeste's body would later be found, tightly wrapped in plastic. The message was matter-of-fact, cold, as though David was discussing something routine, something that needed to be done. It was chilling to think that Celeste's life had been taken so casually, with no regard for her humanity, only a thing to be disposed of. The following messages continued to paint an even darker picture. David reportedly spoke about the plan to silence anyone who knew, including fans who had been close to Celeste. In one message, David allegedly wrote, "Send $1,000 each to the crew. No one talks about Celeste. She's gone quiet forever now, like the song." The coldness of the words left everyone stunned. David wasn't just orchestrating a cover-up, he was bragging about it, as though it were just another performance, another step in his journey to maintain the image of a beloved star. But his world was beginning to crumble, and the messages were clear evidence that he had tried to control the narrative, to ensure no one spoke out. The messages were more than just casual exchanges. They were plans, coldly written in black and white, for silencing a tragedy that was now out of his control. The messages were bad enough, but nothing compared to the chilling transcripts of the phone calls that David had allegedly made. These weren't texts or casual chats. These were phone calls where David, possibly thinking he was untouchable, openly spoke about the murder and its aftermath. The call transcripts, leaked to the media, revealed the dreadful aftermath of Celeste's death, laying bare how David had been desperately trying to cover his tracks. One of the calls, which lasted nearly half an hour, stood out in particular. It detailed the exact steps David had taken to dispose of Celeste's body and erase all traces of her. The transcript read, "Yo, Celeste wouldn't stop texting threats. Had to end it quick. Choked her in the car. Now she's packed. Smells already. Drive the Tesla to the hills tomorrow. Leave the keys under the mat. Tow yard handles the rest. Body rots quiet." Each word in the transcript was like a punch to the gut. The sheer casualness with which David described killing Celeste and getting rid of her body was enough to leave anyone reeling. Choking her in the car, packing her body away, and letting it decompose in a car. Those were not the words of someone who had just lost control in the heat of a moment. These were the words of someone who had planned every step of this. But what made the transcript even more chilling was the tone. David didn't speak with fear or regret. Instead, he spoke with a coldness that suggested he believed he was above it all, that his fame would protect him from any consequences. He didn't even seem to care about Celeste's life or death, only about maintaining his career and image. The call ended with him saying, "She's gone quiet forever now," like the song. Again, the reference to his song, "Romantic Homicide," now took on an even more twisted meaning. The song was no longer just a piece of music. It was his confession. As the investigation continued to unfold, another disturbing discovery came to light. David, it seemed, had attempted to buy silence from anyone who might have known the truth. Fans, associates, and even people who had been involved in the situation were allegedly paid hush money to keep quiet. Leaked financial records showed that David had sent out payments through Venmo and Cash App, transferring large sums of money with cryptic notes like, "For the Celeste thing, stay silent. If the cops ask, you never met her. I made it look like she ran away." The sheer arrogance in these transactions was hard to stomach. David wasn't just trying to erase the evidence. He was buying people's loyalty, paying them to keep his dark secret hidden. The amount of money he had transferred over the months added up to more than $8,000, sent to various people associated with his fan base, his team, and even strangers who had stumbled across his path. Each payment came with a warning to stay quiet, and if anyone spoke out, they were to be silenced. The idea that he thought money could erase a life, could erase a murder, was a sign of just how deep David's arrogance ran. But the thing about secrets, especially when money's involved, is that they never stay hidden for long. The hush money, just like the messages and the call transcripts, was proof that David believed he could manipulate the people around him. Yet no amount of money could stop the truth from coming out. As the investigation dug deeper, the final piece of David's cover-up was revealed: the road to Hollywood Hills. The very place where Celeste's body was abandoned in the back of David's car. David had taken great care in planning the cover-up. He had used his tour schedule as an alibi, thinking that his fans would be distracted by his performances and wouldn't think to question his whereabouts. While he was out on stage in one city after another, the body was left to rot in his Tesla. The car had sat in the Hollywood Hills for weeks, and the authorities had no idea it was there until it was towed for unpaid parking tickets. David had done everything to ensure that the car was parked in a remote location, far from the public eye. He thought that by leaving the body in the Tesla and letting it decompose, he could buy time. But time ran out. On September 8, 2025, the car was finally discovered. When investigators opened the trunk, they found the body of Celeste, wrapped tightly in plastic, exactly as described in the leaked Discord messages. The Tesla, once a symbol of David's fame and wealth, had now become the symbol of his undoing. The dark truth hidden in that trunk would change everything. David's attempt to cover his tracks had failed, and the body that had once been hidden in the back of a car was now out in the open, ready to tell its own story. The road to the Hollywood Hills was more than just a drive. It was the path that led to David's downfall, a road that would forever be associated with Celeste's tragic death. David had thought his fame would protect him. He had thought he could outsmart everyone and get away with it. But the evidence was all around him, and it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down. The moment the leaked audio, Discord messages, and call transcripts started to circulate, the world watched in shock. The internet exploded in real time as social media platforms became the battleground for a war of opinions, revelations, and outrage. The leaked track titled Celeste, the one David never thought would be heard, quickly became the focal point of every conversation. It spread across TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and every other corner of the internet like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags like D4vd leaks and Shush Justice for Celeste began trending worldwide. People couldn't stop talking about it. The song, with its haunting lyrics and chilling references, became more than just a viral track. It became David's confession, a confession he had unknowingly shared with the world. The internet had unearthed the truth before the authorities even had a chance to connect all the dots. On TikTok, fans were stitching the song's lyrics with footage of David's past interviews, performances, and any available images of Celeste, comparing the details in the song with the police's findings. The analysis was intense. Some users created compilations of David's old posts and videos, juxtaposing his seemingly innocent public persona with the cold confession in his leaked song. Others pointed out the eerie connections between the song's lyrics and the evidence gathered at the crime scene. Meanwhile, YouTube exploded with reaction videos. Some were in disbelief, others were in tears, and a few were filled with anger. Channels dedicated to true crime, music analysis, and celebrity gossip all joined in. Thousands of fans, followers, and casual viewers joined the conversation, trying to piece together what had really happened. The more people learned, the more they started to question everything they thought they knew about David. David was no longer the young, gifted artist they once admired. He was now the subject of an international scandal. The floodgates were open, and the world had seen something that could not be unseen. His career, his reputation, his image, all of it was spiraling down in real time, broadcasted for all to see. As the news spread like wildfire, the fans who had once adored David were left in shock. They felt betrayed. The man they had supported, whose music had resonated with them, whose voice had become the soundtrack of their lives, had just been exposed as something completely different, something they couldn't even begin to comprehend. Some fans reacted by flooding social media with disbelief. They couldn't accept the truth. "There's no way David would do something like this," one post read. "He was like family to us." Another said, "How could someone we all trusted be capable of this?" These fans struggled to come to terms with the reality that their beloved artist could be involved in such a horrific crime. Others reacted with raw anger. The comment sections filled with accusations and calls for justice. They had supported David, streamed his music, bought his albums, and cheered for him at his concerts. They had followed him like he was a friend, someone they thought they knew. And now they felt as though they had been duped. "You don't betray people like this," one fan posted. "You don't use your fame to destroy someone else's life." The sense of betrayal was palpable. Then there were the more skeptical fans, those who couldn't quite believe the allegations. "It doesn't make sense," they said. "David was on tour when the body was found. Could he really have done it?" They pointed to his tour schedule and the fact that he was in different cities at the time Celeste's body was discovered. Was it all a setup, or was there some other explanation? Among these fans, the grooming allegations were the most difficult to digest. Fans who had followed David's every move were now questioning the very nature of his interactions with Celeste. The messages, the secrets, the closeness they shared. It all felt like a twisted manipulation, something far darker than the simple fan-artist connection they once thought it was. For Celeste's supporters, the anger was directed at David. They couldn't fathom how someone who was supposed to be an inspiration could take advantage of a young, vulnerable girl. "He wasn't just her idol, he was her predator," one fan wrote. "This wasn't about music anymore. This was about power, control, and cruelty." The fans' reactions were as divided as the internet itself, but one thing was clear: David's image was irreparably tarnished. He was no longer just a talented artist. He was now a potential killer, someone who had betrayed the very people who had helped him rise to fame. As the details of the case continued to unfold, theories began to swirl. The internet was rife with speculation, as people tried to piece together the story from the available evidence. Was David a cold-blooded murderer, or was he the victim of a setup? Were the leaked messages in the demo track all part of a larger conspiracy to bring him down? The most popular theory that spread like wildfire was the idea that David had premeditated the murder. Fans who believed this theory pointed to the chilling lyrics of the song Celeste. They saw the references to the tattoo, the cigarettes, and the exact details of Celeste's death as clear proof that David had known exactly what he was doing long before the murder occurred. Some believed that the song itself was a confession, hidden in plain sight, a cryptic message that David had inadvertently shared with the world months before anyone had uncovered the truth. But not everyone believed that David was guilty. There were supporters who pointed out the timing of the evidence. "How could he have sung about the murder before it happened?" they asked. They argued that the leaked song could have been misinterpreted, that the lyrics were just a part of a dark fantasy David had written, not a confession of a crime he hadn't committed yet. Another theory that began to take shape was the idea that David had been framed. Some people suggested that rivals within the music industry or obsessive fans might have manipulated the situation to bring David down. The release of the song, they argued, could have been timed to perfection, making it look like a confession when, in reality, it was just a coincidence. They pointed to David's tour alibi and questioned the authenticity of the leaked messages, suggesting they could have been tampered with or fabricated. Then there was the more nuanced theory that Celeste's death had been an accident. Some fans believed that the relationship between David and Celeste had started as a grooming situation, but that things had escalated quickly and gotten out of control. A fight, perhaps, that spiraled out of hand. The theory suggested that David had never intended to kill Celeste, but in a moment of rage, he had done something he couldn't take back. Then in a panic, he tried to cover up the crime. The public debate raged on, with each theory gaining traction in different corners of the internet. Everyone seemed to have an opinion, and the internet, once a space for fans to come together, was now a battleground for accusations, counter-arguments, and endless speculation. Everyone had a theory, but the truth was still a mystery. As the theories divided the public, David's reputation continued to crumble. The court of public opinion had already made its decision. The memes began to flood social media, mocking David's fall from grace. His face, once adored by millions, was now plastered across news sites and blogs with phrases like, "David the murderer," and "the rock star who killed his fan." The very thing that had once made him famous, the love of his fans, was now working against him. The internet had sentenced him long before the real courts could even begin their investigation. The backlash was swift. Major sponsors who had once partnered with David quickly pulled their support. Brand deals were canceled and his endorsements vanished. His social media accounts went silent, with David not responding to any of the growing accusations. It was as if he had disappeared entirely, leaving his team to handle the fallout. The social media silence only added to the suspicion. His fans, once so loyal, now saw David's lack of response as an act of guilt. The internet was unforgiving. If he had nothing to hide, why didn't he speak up? They asked. His silence spoke louder than words ever could. David's career, which had once soared to unimaginable heights, was now crashing to the ground. His concerts were being canceled, and his music streams, though still high, were beginning to plummet. Fans who had once been devoted to his music now felt betrayed, and the emotional damage from the revelations was deep. His fans had loved him. They had supported him, but now the question on everyone's mind was whether David was the man they thought he was, or something much darker. The internet had made its verdict clear. David was a pariah. Whether or not he was guilty of murder, his reputation was in ruins, and the damage was far from over. The court of public opinion had already convicted him. The case had exploded across the world, from the streets of Los Angeles to the small bedrooms of fans who once idolized David. His career was crumbling, his name dragged through the mud, and the internet had already sentenced him. But even as the world turned its back on David, the LAPD was still working tirelessly to unravel the truth. Every day, new evidence poured in. DNA samples were analyzed, including those found in the car where Celeste's body was discovered. The Tesla's GPS data was scrutinized, showing David's exact movements the day Celeste was last seen. Detectives were still piecing together the timeline, trying to connect every detail, every piece of evidence, to form a clearer picture of what had really happened. The leaked Discord messages, the call transcripts, and the leaked demo track were all important clues. But the investigation had to go deeper. Forensic evidence from the crime scene had to be compared with David's movements and the things he had said. Could they link him to the murder? Or was there enough doubt to clear him of any crime? The police were facing an uphill battle. On one hand, the evidence seemed to point directly to David. His words in the song matched the details of the crime scene in a way that could not be ignored. On the other hand, David had an alibi. His tour schedule was tight, and he had been performing in different cities when Celeste was killed. Could he have been set up? Was someone trying to destroy his career? These were questions that needed answers, and they weren't going to come easily. The investigation continued, but with each passing day, the pressure to find a resolution grew. The public wanted justice, but would the legal system be able to deliver it? The LAPD was working around the clock, hoping that new pieces of evidence would turn up, hoping that the mystery would soon be solved. But in the world of high-profile cases like this, things weren't always as clear as they seemed. And time was running out to uncover the truth. The facts were all laid out, but the story wasn't over yet. David had become a pariah, his name associated with the murder of a young girl he had once admired from a distance. The leaked song had been the catalyst that turned him from a celebrated artist to a suspected killer, and the public court of opinion had already made its decision. But did the truth lie within those damning lyrics? The key details had been analyzed over and over. The tattoo mentioned in the song, which matched Celeste's. The smell of cigarettes in the car, which was detailed in the lyrics months before anyone knew about it. The timing of the song's release, which came just after Celeste's body was discovered, raised the most disturbing questions. But still, the legal system had to decide whether the evidence was enough to convict David. At the heart of the investigation was the question that everyone wanted answered. Was David guilty? Had he intentionally taken Celeste's life? Or had something gone terribly wrong, spiraling out of control? The case was full of contradictions. The evidence was compelling, but there were gaps that still needed to be filled. What had really happened on the night Celeste disappeared? Celeste's family, the police, and the public were all desperate for answers, but the truth was still elusive. Was David the cold-blooded killer the internet had painted him to be? Or had he been caught in a situation far beyond his control, manipulated by forces he couldn't comprehend? Would the truth ever come to light, or would it remain buried beneath layers of secrecy? The final chapter of this story had yet to be written. The investigation was ongoing. But one thing was certain. No one would ever look at David or the case of Celeste Rivas the same way again. The case of David Anthony Burke and Celeste Rivas was still unfolding, and the world watched with bated breath, waiting for the truth to emerge. The investigation continued, but the story was far from over. What would happen to David? Would the evidence finally bring him to justice, or would he escape with his reputation intact? And what about Celeste? Would she ever get the justice she deserved? As the world waited for answers, the conversation was far from finished. People around the world from all walks of life had weighed in on the case. The theories continued to divide public opinion. Some still believed David was innocent, caught in a conspiracy. Others were sure that the evidence pointed to his guilt. Some even wondered if the entire case was just a tragic misunderstanding, a series of unfortunate events that spiraled too far. But the questions remained. What really happened to Celeste? Was David guilty of murder, or was he the victim of a setup? As new updates emerged, viewers were invited to join the conversation. What did you think happened? Was David guilty, or was there more to the story than met the eye? The mystery was still there, waiting to be solved. The truth was out there, but only time would tell. As the investigation moved forward, the public waited eagerly for the final resolution to this heartbreaking and haunting case. The story wasn't over yet, and those who were following it knew they couldn't stop now. There was still so much left to uncover, and as the mystery continued to unfold, it was clear that everyone, whether they believed in David's guilt or innocence, was a part of the story. Stay tuned. What do you think happened to Celeste? Is David guilty? Comment below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to stay updated on this ongoing investigation. The truth will be revealed, and you won't want to miss it.